in the House of Commons is more control over committees. You heard Mark Garrettson talk about that. And getting their legislation through, it also helps them prevent perhaps some very annoying or pesky probes into ethics issues and whatnot at some of those committees. So,
those pesky probes. They were getting in the way of Mark Carney and his absolute rule. Oh no, better steal a majority from Canadians who so bluntly did not give it to you. But you won't believe just how much worse it gets. My name is Ali Daniel, and this is the Right Call Report. Like, share, subscribe. Any interaction on the channel helps get the truth out and maybe someday break that CBC-induced coma that so many Canadians are under. And if you're tired of that same old government and media BS and finally want some common sense commentary, well then smash that subscribe button because you're in the right place. So welcome to the post-liberal majority world. I woke up this morning to a major flashback from 2015. I remember back then waking up to Trudeau winning a majority and thinking to myself at the time, well, this is gonna suck for the next 3 or 4 years. But little did I know just how bad it would get. And most importantly, just how long this nightmare would last. It's just never ending. Well, here we are, back again, a decade later, and we're in the same boat. Well, you voted for it, you've made your bed, now it's time for all of us, sadly, to lie in it. And that's for about another 3 more years, because there won't be elections until at least 2029. You know, I'm not even giddy about the thought of thinking that Canadians might wake up and realize just how much they were bamboozled by the Liberal Party over the last decade plus. Because I know that they will, with the help of their, CBC and CTV propaganda arm, find a new boogeyman to blame all their upcoming and current failures on just about everything but themselves, and there will be no one to hold them to account. And sadly, Canadians will eat it right up. You know, there's this quote that I absolutely love, and it says that it's only once at a precipice that people find the will to change. And it's clear now more than ever that Canadians apparently can handle a lot more pain than I ever assumed. So we're not quite at the precipice, it seems, because people still have not found the will to change. So Carney was asked if he thinks that the way he obtained a majority will erode public trust in democracy.
You've been able to obtain a majority in large part thanks to 5 floor crossers, which the Conservatives have labeled as anti-democratic. Are you concerned the way you got your majority will erode Canadians' trust in our democracy?
Well, first, I'd point to the election results last night.
You know this is going to be a BS answer because he's already started with the That is the tail of Carney when he's about to spew complete lies up your wahoo.
And we have a majority now in the House of Commons, thanks to the electors in Scarborough Southwest and Terrebonne and in University Rosedale. And as concerns individual deputies who make a choice to support the government's program at this crucial time for the country, whether they're from whatever political stripe, orientation, geographic region they come, consistent with the government program, we're fortunate to have them, and we're moving forward together with them.
But the by-elections last night were in Liberal holds, so you didn't gain any new seats.
Well, I mean, Terrebonne, as-tu vu, Terrebonne, normalement, c'est... Ouais, c'est... OK.
He's stuck, he doesn't know what to say. Better whip out some What a word salad as usual. Lots of words, little meaning. Make no mistake, this is unprecedented, not only in Canadian history, but in the entire history of the Westminster parliamentary system. No government over nearly 900 years of history, whether it be in the United Kingdom or more recently Australia, New Zealand, and yes, Canada, has ever spat in the face of the electorate so boldly by seizing a majority through shady practices, bribery, backroom deals, and overall deception. Because yes, it's the first time in 900 years that a government was given a minority mandate, and through floor crossers only were they able to secure a majority. The first. This spits in the face of the entire premise of democracy.
To take a minority government and through elections, defections, and by-elections, transform it into a majority government of 1, 2, maybe even 3 seats if all goes well today. The fact that 15, 16 months ago, the Liberals were facing extinction, where 40 seats would have been a miracle, to now be at 40% plus in almost every major public opinion poll, and they need to go 1 for 3 in 3 seats they won on Election Day in 2025 to form a majority government. It is a remarkable political resurrection for the Liberal Party, and it gets dismissed and criticized as a Frankenstein majority, but it's a majority, and there's not a party in the world that wouldn't do the same thing.
Elections, defections, and by-elections. Okay, that's a clever little line right there. Notice the spin, though, that they use to create this entire narrative that this is organic, normal, and apparently desired by Canadians. Let's fact-check the media for once, okay? How the turntables.
How the turntables.
Elections. Well, that's false because Canadians saw fit to give you a minority mandate and categorically rejected the premise of a majority. Defections. Okay, well, that's partially true. Sure. Yes, defections. But brought about by what? Why don't we talk about that little snippet that is brushed under the rug? Bribes? Well, perhaps. We know that in the case of Lori Idlout, at least, the Liberal government invested historic amounts of money in her riding right before she crossed the floor. Okay. Then we also have Marilyn Gladue admitting that money was withheld from her riding until she crossed the floor. And then all of a sudden, she started getting phone calls from ministers saying, how can we help you finally? Which is not only illegal, by the way, but completely morally bankrupt. And it just showcases they don't care about Canadians. They care again about power. Look, this isn't organic or a rejection of the opposition party. This is an active operation to undermine the will of the electorate. Pure and simple. And then 3, by-elections. Well, the by-elections didn't get you the majority. They were held in 3 ridings that you already had MPs in place, Liberal MPs. This does not get you any new seats. So this is a deflection to try to, again, undermine that the majority was gained purely through floor crossers. And then there's this spin that he says at the end.
Frankenstein majority, but it's a majority. And there's not a party in the world that wouldn't do the same thing.
Well, at least he's being candid about the reality that they do have very loose morals and they believe in their own little ecosystem that anyone would do such a thing. I disagree. I think that someone with an actual foundation of morals would not think, you know what, let me seize complete power through floor crossing. Yes, conservatives have benefited before from floor crossers. They were already in the majority. This has, again, never been done in 900 years. You are the first. So to assume that any party would do such a thing is not only incredibly audacious, even downright arrogant, but it's more of a testament about how you view the world and the power brokers within it. And this entire narrative is just simply used to normalize, by all account, something that is undemocratic, period. They will continually hammer it into your brain until you relent and give up and think, yeah, you know what, this is normal. Yeah, this is totally normal. Like, for example, there's another tactic they used. Did you catch it in the first instance?
To now be at 40% plus in almost every major public opinion poll. And
there it is. Using public opinion polls in order to validate and justify the fact that people apparently want a majority when that is patently false. And it's also their latest con, trying to justify every move that they make. And there's only one little issue with this entire thing. It's patently misleading. Because David Coletto of Obasca's data shreds the entire polling industry in Canada. And he finds that conservative voters are indeed underrepresented in those intention voting polls or whatnot. 2, pollsters aren't weighing their polls properly, so they're manipulating the data in order to show an illusion and then to use it to prop up new narratives that they then pushed through your teeth with the help of the propaganda arm of the Liberal Party, and that the Conservative Party's support is underestimated by 5 to 7 points. That is huge. And it says it right here, 43 surveys, 5 election cycles, 1 consistent pattern. Read this with me. In every single wave across every single election cycle, conservative voters are underrepresented in our demographically weighted sample relative to their actual share of the vote. Not in most waves, not in some elections. In every case we can observe. So, 2 things stand out. First, this pattern is consistent. It is not driven by election, one leader, or one moment in time. It holds across very different political contexts. Second, the gap appears immediately after each election and persists throughout the cycle. If this were primarily a problem of memory, we would expect the gap to grow over time as recall becomes less reliable. But this is not what we see. The bias is present early and remains relatively stable within each parliament. This suggests the issue is not primarily about what people remember or report. It is about who is in the sample in the first place. Do you understand now why they keep bringing up polls all the time? It gives them this false sense of supremacy that people are behind them. They use the propaganda arm of the Liberal Party, the CBC and the CTV, to push it down your throat, and then it demoralizes everyone and sadly leads them to believe that this is indeed what Canada wants, and as such, so be it. Let me bend over and take it. It ain't the case. Conservatives are vastly more popular than the media will ever let you know.
What is your message to Liberals who are uncomfortable with the idea of someone like Ms. Gladue, who's been open about her socially conservative views, joining your caucus?
Well, there's two things. One is we're fortunate to have somebody who has long experience in business, long experience. It brings great managerial and technical expertise. I mean, we're actually here at a project that requires that level of expertise. I mean, she's not going to run this project, but this is, you laugh. You're not laughing, your colleagues are laughing.
Just had to take a second to show him trying to justify his entire big tent project, basically, at a work site. Which, by the way, I will be fascinated to see what this work site looks like in 2 months when the Liberals are gone, because it's not the first time they're caught staging an entire photo op or media presser, only to then realize that it was exactly that, just a big prop, and it was actually no construction. Last time was for housing, for example. But it's just kind of funny. Even the media is kind of laughing at his explanation. I mean, there's just not much else to say. But now the Liberals lose their biggest crutch, aside from Donald Trump, of course, that of blaming the opposition for everything that's wrong in Canada and every single one of their failures.
This is ultimately not what voters said they wanted, and it isn't what they've wanted since 2019. A majority government has been denied to the Liberals since that time. I believe Vanda now when she says that the government would have an easier time getting through legislation. I think that explains why there has been such a fervor to compile this Frankenstein government with floor crossers and now some favorable by-elections to do so, because that is the outcome of a majority. Is it the outcome that Canadians voted for? No, it is not. And I would also say in the last year, what has been reasonably obstructed as a result of the opposition in the House that the government has attempted to achieve. Because what I've seen is cross-partisan support for nation-building projects and for pipelines and for some of the things that the Prime Minister has promised to do. He's going to lose that crutch of the opposition being obstinate with a majority government, and the government is going to come under some real scrutiny for the first time in a very long time about what they are delivering, or more appropriately not, for Canadians, when they no longer can point to Pierre Poilievre and say that he's the problem because of the minority government.
My only fear in all this, and she's completely right, is just that, of course, the Liberals are masters, with, again, the help of the propaganda arm, the mainstream media, of finding boogeymen. And I can't make this up. They were blaming the shortcomings of jobs, the job losses in our economy, on the Iran war that began like a month and a half ago. But here's the kicker. The job loss were like 2 months before the war started. So never underestimate the power of deflection that the Liberals wield. They are masters at deflecting and finding boogeymen. And it only works so long as the media does not hold them accountable. And we know this historically won't happen. And this is why I'm here. Hi.
So it is going to change the dynamic in the House. I do think, though, it provides an opportunity in a few different ways. Number one, I think that the Liberals are going to walk right into a number of ethics challenges, as we saw in the last majority government. There is a tighter scrutiny that happens around that in a minority context. Again, if we see a move to shut down committee studies about conflicts of interest or try and sweep things under the rug, as what happened in Trudeau majority mandate, that's going to breathe some life into the opposition or give them opportunities to call out those challenges.
But we know that's exactly what's going to happen. I mean, Carney is a walking conflict of interest, the likes that have never been seen in Canadian history. I mean, it makes Trudeau look like an absolute choir boy in comparison. And of course, we know that the reason why Carney wanted a majority is not only so that he can more easily shove a lot of autocratic, tyrannical rules down our throat. We know this: C9, C12, C22, C2, C8, I'll name them all. But I honestly think it's because, it prevents him from being questioned so much on these conflicts of interest, and from Conservatives being able to put up a fight in committee. And I mean, I'm not the only one who says it, right?
House of Commons is more control over committees. You heard Mark Garretson talk about that. And getting their legislation through, it also helps them prevent perhaps some very annoying or pesky probes into ethics issues and whatnot at some of those committees. So look, a certain ease of path, but I don't doubt that it also strengthens, I think, the hand of some of the more left-leaning Liberals within caucus to basically, cajole Carney into addressing some of their issues.
Yeah, that's what we need in Canada, more left-leaning members of a caucus pushing, ramming socialism down our throat. Woo! Fun. Now, you've heard me say time and time again that the CBC and CTV in the mainstream media is the propaganda arm of the Liberal Party. Well, the reason I say this is for reasons obviously displayed in the following clip. I want you to keep in mind, Have you ever heard the regime media talk to Mark Carney the way that they do to opposition members?
Talk about
For Heather, can we get a question on Trump blocking Iranian ports? But Trump is blocking ports.
David, you're next.
Trump is blocking ports. Are we not allowed to get answer from the Foreign Affairs?
What's next? I'm happy to take your question.
That's the press gallery's room. If Mickey's got a question, she got it up before I did, so.
Okay.
The question is for Heather as Foreign Affairs
I'm going to
critic.
take the rest of the questions today. Thank you.
Okay, well, what do you make of, well, first off, why can't the Foreign Affairs critic answer? And secondly, what do you make of Trump blockading ports in Iran?
It is. So, first of all, we had a conversation as a caucus before the press conference, and they encouraged me to do my first press conference on the Hill and answer the questions. Yes, I thought it was appropriate when talking about someone's personal future to give Alex a chance to speak about that. Would you like my answer on the question?
Yes.
Welcome to the gauntlet, Avi Lewis. I don't think you're prepared for just how much the vultures are gonna jump on your carcass. They hound. I would love for them to have the same intensity and energy hounding, Carney whenever he gives BS answers or runaround answers or just word salad answers than they do on not even the official opposition leader here. Avi Lewis is leading a dead party at this point, and they hound him in ways that we've never seen the Liberals be hounded. Now, one thing that certainly also won't change under the Liberal majority government is the continuing and unrelenting attacks on Pierre Poilievre, who, may I remind you again, is leading the opposition. He's not actually the government.
15 months ago, Pierre Poilievre had a 25-point lead. Since then, he's lost the national election, he's lost his own seat, and Mark Carney is going to get a majority largely on the strength of defections from Pierre Poilievre's caucus. Right? That is a track.
Oh, wait, in this clip, he finally says that the reason there's a majority is because of defections. I thought it was for elections, defections, and by-elections. Oops, it's hard to maintain the lie when you have to give so many of them. I get it. Okay, let's keep hearing him bash Poilievre.
Record, and I know he sent letters to his shadow cabinet saying justify your role, and this may be a reason Marilyn Gladu crossed the floor. I think you were confirming that on Friday on the show, Fred. But a year and a half ago, we were talking about he needs a finance minister, he needs this, and now he needs time.
Let me remind you that the Liberals have been in power now for over a decade. Why do they keep spending so much time and effort and airtime attacking Poilievre? I think it's because Poilievre is still a major threat to the Liberal Party, especially considering his position in opposition. He's a hound, he's a shark. You know how snappy and witty and unrelenting he can be in the House of Commons during question period. He is amazing at that. Still remains to be seen how good he would be as the Prime Minister himself. But as an opposition leader, Poilievre excels. And I think that scares the Liberals big time. I mean, look, the oldest rule of power is the following. Never interfere, never get in the way of your enemy committing mistakes or destroying itself. So if Pierre Poilievre is so bad for the Conservatives, and him staying on board as the Conservative leader would benefit the Liberals by giving them so many more defections, then why attack him? So they're doing the opposite of that rule, never interfering with your enemy destroying itself. So it can only lead to the logical conclusion. They see him as a threat, a major one at that. I mean, have they ever run this level of interference on, say, I don't know, O'Toole back in the day, or even Scheer? I don't think so, never. But Poilievre, all hands on deck, baby. Load up the guns. We must hit. Now, I've said it before, and I'll say it again, I ain't a partisan. And I will call it how I see it. So credit where credit is due. A huge announcement today on the federal fuel excise tax.
We all know that because of the war with Iran, fuel prices have increased sharply around the world, including right here in Canada. So we're taking more action to help build that bridge over short-term pressures. With the Minister of Finance and the Minister of Natural Resources, we're announcing today that Canada's new government will temporarily suspend the federal fuel excise tax from next Monday until Labor Day. We're also removing the fuel excise tax on aviation fuels. This will remove up to 10 cents per litre on gasoline and 4 cents per litre on diesel fuel.
Did you catch it, by the way? He keeps calling it Canada's new government. Again, they're just trying to gaslight you. It ain't a new government, guys. It's been 11 years. But it's maybe preparing the table for the next deflection. I'm new. It's taking time for things to happen. It keeps getting worse, but it's not my fault. I'm new. Give me more time. We know this is BS, of course. But hey, ultimately, this is a good thing. I'm happy to see it. And I'm not going to start finding holes into why this is bad. No, let's give credit where credit is due. This is good for Canadians. This is good for Canada, okay? I do, however, will say that it is also major thanks to Poilievre for doing what the opposition leader should be doing. Pushing these things through. Because make no mistake, Carney would have never done this if it wasn't for Poilievre and the Conservatives over the last 2 weeks hounding the Liberals to do this over and over again. But, forget this. There is one tiny little caveat that I have to touch on. Removing the excise tax is a good thing, but the excise tax is a fixed tax. It's 10 cents a liter, point à la ligne, period. It's the same no matter what the cost of the oil of barrel is. However, we also pay GST, a sales tax, which is percentage-based, 5%. So it's logical to reason that the more oil prices go up, the more the barrel of oil goes up, the more money in absolute amount the government collects. So yes, the government right now is actually making a killing on the rising oil prices. So, on one hand, they giveth 10 cents a liter back, but on the other hand, they taketh, and you won't believe just how much they taketh.
Oil prices aren't hurting this government, they're actually funding the government, because with every $10 of increase in oil prices, the Liberals get $2 billion more in tax revenue. That means Liberals are collecting a generational windfall at the pumps, while Canadians pay more for everyday essentials.
That's wild to consider. Every $10 increase on a barrel of oil is $2 billion of additional taxes in the Liberals' coffers. So it brings to reason then, they removed the 10 cents fuel excise taxes. Why not remove the GST? I mean, they've given GST breaks before. Why not remove the GST as well? I'm just saying that. Now, for my Quebec people, I don't know how many of you guys are from Quebec, but how about we start fighting for removing the carbon tax? And for all the other Canadians and Americans who watch this, Quebec is the only place in Canada now that still has a carbon tax on fuel. This is not helping the whole Quebec is the most taxed jurisdiction in the freaking world. Maybe not the world, but definitely North America. Right now, forget these dollar or cent numbers because they were based on fuel prices when it was still, normal. But we have to keep in mind just how much we pay taxes here. So today's announcement, the federal excise taxes on fuel, that's 10 cents. That's gone now. Boop, slashed. Great. In Quebec, though, we're still going to be paying nearly 20 cents, nearly double of fuel excise taxes, or tax on fuel it's called here. Then we have that GST, right? The sales taxes at the federal level that is making $2 billion extra per $10 dollar. And of course, Quebec needs to double everything, so double the cost for the Quebec provincial sales tax, the TVQ here it's called. And then Quebec has its 8.5 cents. It's actually a little bit higher now because this graph is a little bit older. Carbon tax. Carbon tax. Nice, isn't it? We love that. For the rest of Canada, you can forget the carbon tax. It's gone. You can forget the excise tax. That's gone. You're definitely still going to have your HST or PST. You're still going to have your federal tax. And you're probably still going to have your provincial tax depending where it is. So, I mean, we're still being taxed to death. We're still paying something like 30 or 40 cents more per liter in Canada than they do in the US. And that's accounting for currency devaluation of Canadian dollars. Another thing that's being devalued in Canada, though, is access to information. Because last weekend at the Liberal Convention in Montreal, the federal Liberals agreed to set a social media age restriction for kids. Federal Liberals have agreed to set 16 as the age of majority for Canadians to be able to use social media accounts. They say that social media companies need to be more accountable and stop allowing young children to use technologies designed to be addictive. I've been wanting to talk about this for a little bit, and I'm mitigated on that point. Now, let's start with the obvious and the elephant in the room. According to the Liberals, kids as young as 14 years old should be free to make life-altering and lifelong life-altering decisions to use certain chemicals to change you-know-what about them. But those same Liberals are telling us that kids as young as 14 and 15 should not have agency to browse social media, and they should be protected. Make it make sense. Well, actually, yes, I can make it make sense for you. See, this is not about protecting kids, because protecting kids should come first and foremost in the form of parental guidance. Right now, nothing is stopping parents from putting restrictions on their kids from consuming social media if they see fit. There are tremendous issues with social media. Those are very well founded, and it is true that tech companies go to great length to play with your dopamine receptors in your head, to create dopamine feedback loops, and to keep you hooked on the platforms. It is insidious, and it is wrong, but it is not up to the government to control that. Because when the government controls these things, it leads to two very perverse outcomes. One, well, obviously, control. Forcing age verification, and most importantly, putting the onus of verifying the age of your users onto the platform will make it so that the various tech companies, Meta, Snap, Twitter, TikTok, will now have to verify your government ID. You will have to upload your government ID in order to make sure that you are 16 and compliant to this new federal regulation. Now, this kills the most important thing that social media give you: anonymity. This will forever destroy anonymous accounts. Because when you combine that with totalitarian laws like C9, C12, C22, laws that criminalizes memes and posts on Facebook and X, and grant the power to ministers to arrest, or worse, kick off the internet anyone who is deemed a threat, and yet the threat is not actually defined or codified in the law, and that secretly and with no court oversights, well, all of a sudden having an anonymous account becomes that much more important. Because it allows you to continue to fight, continue to say what needs to be said, continue to use your free speech laws that this government is so candidly trying to rein in. And it's the only way to keep them accountable. Well, now, if you must verify your age and upload an ID, then those platforms will have your actual identity behind your anonymous or your faceless account. And then with C9, C12, and C22, they can compel these tech companies to give them the information, and there you go. You're either arrested or kicked off the internet. And this is why I'm absolutely against age verification. But number two, it prevents the next generation from informing themselves outside of the government-controlled and approved ecosystem of the media and the education system. And if the youth is not capable of freely informing themselves, well, you're creating an entire cohort of indoctrinated zealots to the party's narrative. And this is a literal page out of the communist ideology playbook. But don't take it from me. Take it from a literal former Soviet KGB defector. The KGB is like the CIA of the Soviet Union, who laid out all the steps for a government to take over control of an entire generation.
Stages. The first one being demoralization. It takes from 15 to 20 years to demoralize a nation. Why that many years? Because this is the minimum number of years which requires to educate one generation of students in the country of your enemy, exposed to the ideology of the enemy. In other words, Marxism-Leninism ideology is being pumped into the soft heads of at least 3 generations of American students without being challenged or counterbalanced by the basic values of Americanism, American patriotism.
And there you have it. This is exactly why I oppose age verification and preventing kids from using social media. But most importantly, it also usurps power away from the parents. Instead of telling parents that they should do what's needed and, parent their kids, we're once again offloading that responsibility to the government, to the nanny state. Promote family values instead of promoting a government to replace it. That's my take. And if you want to know some more crazy ideologies that are coming out of the Liberal Party that will now undoubtedly be force-fed through our faces, thanks to their majority, well, you might want to watch this video right here where I break down all the highlights of the last week's Liberal convention and the crazy ideas that they're pushing on us very shortly. And for the time being, my name is Elliot Daniel, and I'll see you guys later this week.